The golden retriever wouldn't let the toddler near the blocks. When Sarah Mitchell finally understood why, her blood ran cold. For 3 weeks, their gentle dog had been acting like a monster, growling and hoarding expensive toys meant for their daughter. Sarah had been ready to call a trainer, maybe even rehome him. But what the allergist revealed about those innocent-looking wooden blocks was so shocking, it made Sarah realize she'd almost punished the one creature trying to save her child's life. Before watching, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another heart-gripping story like this one. Sarah Mitchell had always believed she made careful choices for her daughter. Every product in their home was researched, every toy vetted, every decision weighed with the precision of a woman who'd lost too much sleep reading parenting forums. So when she ordered the premium European wooden blocks for Emma's second birthday, she'd felt confident. The listing promised handcrafted quality, non-toxic varnish, sustainable materials. She'd paid nearly $200 for 48 blocks in a cedar box. Cooper, their 5-year-old golden retriever, had been Emma's shadow since the day they brought her home from the hospital. He'd never shown aggression. Not once. He slept beside her crib, followed her during tummy time, and waited patiently while she grabbed fistfuls of his fur. That's why the growling started like a knife through Sarah's heart. It happened the morning after Emma's birthday party. The toddler waddled toward the blocks scattered across the playroom floor, her chubby hands reaching for a blue cube. Cooper appeared from nowhere, his body blocking Emma's path. A low rumble came from his chest. "Cooper, no!" Sarah rushed forward, pulling Emma back. The dog didn't move. He stood over the blocks like a sentry, his usual soft eyes suddenly hard. What the hell is wrong with him? David, her husband, stood in the doorway, coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips. "I don't know, he's never done this." But Cooper did it again, and again. Every time Emma approached those blocks, the dog materialized, growling, positioning himself between child and toy. By the third day, he'd collected every single block in his mouth, one by one, and deposited them in a pile behind the couch. When Sarah tried to retrieve them, Cooper's growl deepened, his lips pulling back just enough to show teeth. "This is insane," David said that night, his voice tight with frustration. "We can't have him acting like this around Emma. What if he bites her?" "He won't bite her. He's never." "You don't know that anymore, Sarah. Look at him." Cooper sat in the corner of the playroom, his body curled protectively around the pile of blocks. His eyes tracked Emma's every movement, but there was something in his expression that wasn't quite aggression. Sarah couldn't name it then. Desperation, maybe. Purpose. "I'll call a trainer tomorrow," she said quietly, her throat tight. The trainer came on a Tuesday. Melissa Chen specialized in behavioral issues, and her reputation was flawless. She spent an hour observing Cooper, testing his reactions, watching him interact with Emma and the blocks. "It's resource guarding," Melissa finally said, her tone confident. "Sometimes dogs develop it suddenly, especially around high-value items. The wood might smell interesting to him, or he's decided these are his toys. We can work through it, but it'll take time and consistency." Sarah wanted to believe her. They started the exercises that afternoon. Positive reinforcement when Cooper allowed Emma near the blocks. Treats and praise, gentle corrections. But Cooper wouldn't budge. If anything, his behavior intensified. He stopped eating his meals if the blocks were in Emma's reach. He paced the house at night, checking on them. His ribs started showing through his golden coat. "This isn't working," David said 2 weeks later, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "He's getting worse. And Emma, look at her hands." Sarah's stomach dropped. Emma's palms were slightly red, almost irritated. She'd been fussy lately, rubbing her hands together, whimpering more than usual. "Maybe it's just dry skin. It's winter. Or maybe we need to face reality." David's jaw was set. If Cooper's this stressed, if he's not responding to training, we might need to consider other options. The words hung between them like smoke. Other options. Rehoming. Giving away the dog who'd been with them since before Emma existed. "One more week," Sarah whispered. "Please." But she didn't make it a week. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Sarah had been folding laundry in the bedroom when she heard Emma's delighted squeal from the playroom. She'd somehow gotten to the blocks. Cooper must have been outside, must have been distracted for just a moment. Sarah rushed downstairs to find Emma sitting in the pile of scattered blocks, one clutched in each hand, bringing them to her mouth the way toddlers do with everything. Emma, no. The back door slammed. Cooper burst into the room like a missile, his bark sharp and frantic. He didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, his jaws closing around the blocks in Emma's hands, yanking them away. Emma toppled backward, screaming, "Cooper, no!" Sarah grabbed her daughter, fury flooding her veins. Cooper stood there panting, the blocks at his feet, his whole body trembling. For one terrible second, Sarah hated him. This dog she'd loved, who'd slept at the foot of her bed for 5 years, who'd been gentle and patient and perfect until 3 weeks ago. That's it. Her voice was ice. David, call Melissa. Tell her we need to discuss placement options. Cooper's ears flattened. He lowered his head, but he didn't move away from the blocks. Even now, even with Sarah's anger crackling through the air like electricity, he wouldn't leave them. David appeared in the doorway. What happened? He knocked Emma over. He could have hurt her. Sarah's hands shook as she examined their daughter, checking for marks for anything. I can't do this anymore. I can't risk. She stopped. Emma's palms, pressed against Sarah's shirt, were redder than before. Not just irritated, inflamed. Small welts were forming along the creases of her fingers. David, look at her hands. Something no one had noticed in the chaos of Cooper's behavior. Emma's hands had gotten worse every time she'd managed to touch those blocks. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. The blocks. The pediatrician couldn't see them until the next morning, so Sarah took Emma to an urgent care clinic. The doctor on duty was young, efficient, and immediately concerned. How long has she had this rash? 2, maybe 3 weeks? We thought it was dry skin. Has she been exposed to any new products? Soaps, lotions, toys? Sarah's mouth went dry. She got wooden blocks for her birthday, European made. The listing said non-toxic. The doctor's expression shifted. I'm going to refer you to an allergist. Tonight, keep her away from those blocks. Wash her hands thoroughly with mild soap. If the rash spreads or she develops any breathing difficulties, go to the ER immediately. Sarah drove home with her heart hammering. David met her at the door, Cooper pressed against his legs. The allergist can see us tomorrow afternoon, she said, her voice barely steady. The doctor thinks it might be the blocks. David's face went pale. The blocks? She said some European wood treatments use compounds that can cause reactions, even ones marketed as non-toxic. They both turned to look at Cooper. The dog sat perfectly still, his eyes moving between them and Emma, that same desperate purpose written across his face. Oh God, David whispered. He knew. The allergist was a woman in her 60s named Dr. Patricia Ramos, and she listened to Sarah's story with increasing intensity. She examined Emma's hands under a magnifying light, asked detailed questions about the blocks, and finally requested to see them. David had brought one in a sealed plastic bag. Dr. Ramos studied it carefully, then looked up with grave eyes. I'm going to send this for analysis, but I can tell you right now that your daughter is having a contact allergic reaction. See these welts? This pattern is consistent with exposure to certain chemical compounds used in wood finishing. Some European manufacturers use a varnish containing pine resin derivatives that are technically natural and can be labeled non-toxic, but they're highly allergenic for some people. But she's only touched them a few times, Sarah said, her voice shaking. That's all it takes. And here's what concerns me most. Dr. Ramos pulled up images on her computer. This type of reaction can escalate. Every exposure sensitizes the immune system further. If she'd continued playing with these blocks daily, touching them, putting them in her mouth as toddlers do, she could have developed a severe systemic reaction. Breathing difficulties, anaphylaxis. The room tilted. Sarah gripped the edge of the examination table. If it hadn't been for your dog, Dr. Ramos continued, her voice gentle, you might not have noticed until the reaction became dangerous. Animals have incredibly sensitive olfactory systems. He was almost certainly detecting the chemical compound and recognized it was causing your daughter distress. He was trying to protect her the only way he knew how. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. For 3 weeks, she'd been angry at Cooper. She'd called him aggressive. She'd considered giving him away. And all that time, he'd been saving Emma's life. Dogs can sense things we can't, Dr. Ramos said. Changes in body chemistry, subtle scents that indicate illness or allergic reactions. Your Cooper wasn't guarding resources, he was guarding your daughter. The drive home was silent. Emma dozed in her car seat, her hands wrapped in soft gauze. David gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. Sarah stared out the window, tears streaming down her face. When they pulled into the driveway, Cooper was waiting at the front window. His tail started wagging the moment he saw them. Sarah got Emma settled for a nap, then went downstairs. Cooper sat in the hallway, his head low, his eyes watchful, waiting, always waiting. She knelt in front of him, her legs buckling as the weight of everything crashed over her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Cooper's tail thumped once against the floor. Tentative, hopeful. Sarah reached for him, and he came immediately, pressing his head against her chest, his whole body trembling. She wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his fur, sobbing. You were trying to tell me. You were trying to protect her, and I didn't listen. I almost gave you away. I almost." David crouched beside them, his hand on Cooper's back. "You saved her, buddy. You saved our little girl." Cooper licked Sarah's face, then David's, his tail wagging, harder now. There was no resentment in him, no anger at the weeks of frustration and misunderstanding, just relief that they finally understood. That night, Sarah burned the blocks in their fireplace, watching the expensive European wood blacken and curl. Cooper sat beside her, his head resting on her knee, and for the first time in 3 weeks, his body was relaxed. The test results came back confirming Dr. Ramos's suspicion. The varnish contained a pine resin derivative known to cause severe allergic reactions in a small percentage of people. The manufacturer had used it because it was natural and eco-friendly, never considering that natural didn't always mean safe. Sarah left a detailed review on the website where she'd purchased the blocks. Within a week, 3 other parents commented with similar stories. The product was eventually recalled, but that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was the morning Sarah found Emma sitting on the floor with Cooper, her small hands buried in his fur, and the dog's expression was pure contentment. What mattered was that David stopped walking past Cooper without acknowledging him, started sitting on the floor to scratch behind his ears, whispering thank you like a prayer. What mattered was that Sarah learned to trust the things she couldn't see, the warnings that came without words. Sometimes the line between safety and catastrophe is guarded not by our careful research or best intentions, but by instincts older and wiser than reason. Sometimes what looks like aggression is actually devotion. Sometimes the ones we're ready to cast aside are the ones holding the door shut against dangers we can't even see. Cooper couldn't speak, couldn't explain, couldn't make them understand with words. But he'd stood his ground anyway, willing to be misunderstood, willing to be hated, because protecting Emma mattered more than being loved. And in the end, that's what saved them all. If this story opened your eyes to the extraordinary ways animals protect us, don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts about trusting animal instincts, and subscribe for more powerful true stories. Share it with friends and family who have pets, because sometimes the guardian angels in our lives have 4 legs and fur, and they speak a language we've forgotten how to hear.